Yes. Greetings, everyone. My name is Kwame Gonza. As you know, this is the weekly African Roundup updates, a program which is brought to you by Full Moon Holdings. The program is being sponsored by Full Moon Holdings. Full Moon Holdings, as I've put it on the website here, is a shopping website where you can find all types of things, from shopping different kind of products, to engineering, uh, of projects, fabrication in the West African region, in Ghana and the West African region. And there's a lot of things. Also, we sell cars. That website. We also sell things like vehicles. So they are the ones who are bringing you this program, the weekly African Roundup update. So it is important that you go out there. We sell electric cars specifically, and we sell also other shopping. We do other shopping activities. Let me just show you a little bit what happens. So the shop has Full Moon Entertainment. It has Full Moon Online Mall, and then it has Josa Engineering, Saloon Glamour, and a couple of other companies in one website. So you can go out there. So we sell electric cars, as you are seeing. You can go out there to shop for electric cars so that you don't have to buy fuel anymore. You just charge your car if you are around Accra, and you can drive up to Kumasi and come back, within a range of 400 kilometers, as you can see here. You can drive for 400 kilometers without charging. So that is what Full Moon Holdings and Full Moon Online Mall is about. So these are things which you can easily do. So Full Moon Holdings is the one bringing you this program. So as you can see, the car, I've tried to zoom in a little bit so that you can be able to see that is the price, and you can go out there. So Full Moon Holdings is the one bringing you the program. Today, we are going to look at a couple of news that has happened within the African world, and then around the African continent. The purpose of this program is to update the public about what is happening on the African continent, and then all the other news that are happening around the world that affect the African continent and the African people, of course. And that is the purpose of this program. My brother TT is not available today, but nevertheless, we shall go ahead. So the highlights of the news we have today is that the Ghana economy, was declared junk status. According to Fitch, who grade the performance of economies, they are saying that the Ghana economy has become junk according to their assessments about this economy. So we want to see, is it really true that what they are saying makes sense, or it doesn't make sense? So we will examine whether that makes sense or it doesn't make any sense. So that is number one. Now we have another news about the European Union. The European Union has continued to put itself in the affairs of East Africa oil pipeline, and the governments in Uganda and Tanzania have been able to push back, definitely, and they have called this attack neocolonial and racist in nature, considering that Europe itself has a lot of pipeline, more than the whole of Africa combined, even though the African continent is bigger than Europe, but Europe has more pipelines around the East continent. So this is being looked at as a good measure of hypocrisy and neocolonialism. Number three, we had the TPLF in the Horn of Africa, in Ethiopia, who have been carrying out a rebellion against the democratically elected government of Prime Minister Abiy in Ethiopia, agreeing to a negotiation which is mediated by the African Union, even though in the past they have not agreed to come to table to negotiate under the guidance and leadership of the African Union. And the government in Ethiopia has insisted that these negotiations have to be led by the African Union, and we have to find African solutions to African problems. Number two, not number two, number four, we will look at the United Nations speeches which were given a few weeks ago, last week. We concluded with the speeches which were given by the African heads of state. And so we want to look at, in summary, these speeches: who was the best, who was the worst, and then we want to provide some criticism of these speeches. Okay, we will provide some criticism of these speeches, and then commendation later on, and then lastly we'll have the coup in Burkina Faso. We had a coup in Burkina Faso, and we will briefly look at that coup and the implications. Definitely, the African Union came out to condemn the coup, but we will look at it and see what the African Union was able to say and what are the implications of this coup, definitely, which is very important. So, without delaying, let us kick it off with the first news, which is about the Ghanaian economy. The news about the Ghanaian economy. According to Fitch, it downgraded Ghana's economy to further junk status from triple C to double C. The long-term local and foreign currency issuer default ratings of Ghana have been once again downgraded by the international credit rating agency Fitch Ratings. The ratings agency in August 2022 downgraded Ghana's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to triple C from B. In a release posted on its website, Fitch Ratings, the agency indicated that it normally does not give a credit rating below triple C. Fitch Ratings has downgraded Ghana's long-term local and foreign currency issuer default ratings to double C from triple C. Fitch typically does not assign outlooks to issuers. So this is within a period actually of 1 month that an economy which they claim was not doing well has been further downgraded. So I'll zoom in a little bit for you to see here so that you can understand what they are talking about, these people. So the Ghanaian economy has definitely not been doing well structurally. If you look at the economy, not that the other economies around the continent are doing well, they are also not doing well when you look around the African continent. Let us remind ourselves that for the last 30 years, 20 to 30 years, the African economies have been doing exceptionally well, whereby we have had some of the fastest growing economies on the continent, simply because of the rise of China. African economies have been able to export a lot of commodities. I mean raw materials, which China has been in need very much for its manufacturing. So this has led to Africa having to grow, within figures of 5% up to 10%. If you are talking about countries like Ethiopia, which were growing at 7 to 10%. So that growth that was happening in Asia, sparked growth in Africa, because Africa was selling more raw materials to Asia. And now, to a certain level, when China slows down a little bit, because its economy has slowed down up to around 4.3, somewhere there, 4%. Then this is likely to affect Africa also, because our economies have been depending on the growth that was happening in Asia. So this also affects Africa. Now, our economies were not growing since the 70s because the Western world, it doesn't want to cooperate with Africa for it. If you look at it, the only thing which they want is for them to exploit the African continent. So that is why our relationship with the West is mostly not beneficial at all, because they are more focused on extracting our resources and not giving anything back. Okay, so this relationship which we have had with the Asian countries is the one which has led us to have the fastest growing economies. Now, what is happening in Ghana is that the Ghanaian economy is mostly owned by foreign corporations. When we are talking about mining, which is the major is a major contributor to the to the economy, to the revenues of the economy. Gold, definitely second biggest producer of gold, after South Africa. Even at a certain level, a few years ago, Ghana overtook South Africa to be the biggest producer of gold. But where does all that gold go? So we ask those questions, and the leaders cannot answer because they don't want to confront these mining companies. They think that they will be removed from power, which they love very much. Now, when we talk about cocoa, we don't have those manufacturing hubs for processing cocoa so that chocolate can be distributed all across Africa and all across the world. That is another handicap. And then a lot of importing of food like rice, which is very problematic. So you find that the whole economy is in the hands of foreigners, and the financial sector, of course, which is supposed to give credit to businesses, is owned by foreigners. So a lot of money is flowing from the economy, and this becomes a problem because of the heating, because of the heating by COVID and the war in Ukraine. Then investors, they pull out their money to try to be safe, to try to spend it on themselves for security reasons. And so what is needed in the economy is the structural change in the economy, so that you can give the economy back to the people, you can give the economy back to the Africans. Other than that, the country will continue to suffer, and the problems will not be addressed. Ghana, for the last quarter, the third quarter of the year, grew by I think 4.3. So when Fitch says that the economy has further downgraded to junk status, so this becomes questionable a little bit, because I remember actually a friend of mine who's working with the UN said that she doesn't believe in these figures, which these grading agencies like Fitch come out and grade the African economies to make them look like they are more risky. They are risky for investors to come in. And it's the same thing with organizations like Human Rights Commission, all those ones who say Africans are violating human rights. And yet, Africans are not the ones bombing Iraq. They are not the ones bombing, Afghanistan. They are not the ones stealing 7 billion from Afghanistan. So these organizations then started becoming questionable in their activities. And this is something which Africans, I think, have to start being attentive to. They start, we have to start paying attention to these kind of activities and allegations. And so this is not to mean that the president in Ghana has done well, because he has not touched, he's scared of touching the structural problem of the continent, the structural problem of the country. They have to start touching the structural problem of the country. Mining contracts have to be renegotiated, and the government has to own 50% in the mines. These contracts have to be renegotiated. The oil contracts have to be renegotiated. The country has to own 75% in the oil. other than that, problems cannot be solved in the nation, and people will continue to slide further into poverty, because even though the economy is growing, it doesn't grow for the people. It grows for foreigners, and mostly who are Europeans and Americans. You see, so this is the problem that is happening in the economy, and those problems, I believe that those problems have to be addressed, and they have to be urgently, addressed. They have to be urgently addressed. So that is it about the Ghana economy. That is news which is coming out, from the Ghana economy. Definitely. So the other news which we want to touch on the East Africa oil pipeline. The East Africa oil pipeline. On the issue of the East Africa oil pipeline, we see that President Museveni responded to the Europeans. These Europeans, they were claiming, that the East African oil pipeline is going to cause environmental destruction. Okay, but this so-called environmental destruction which they are talking about, the European Parliament, first of all, which is passing bills that are supposed to work in East Africa, in Africa, just like how the United States Congress passes bills and says this bill is for Africa. We Africans are not voting in their elections. We are not their citizens. So it is not mistaken for people like the Deputy Speaker of Parliament of Uganda calling these neo-colonial activities. It's the same thing like what we witnessed in Berlin in 1885, whereby Europe sat and made themselves lords over Africa and divided Africa into partitions, and they came and implemented those. And that age is over. That era is over. So when these people start, carrying out such activities, we as Africans, we have to pay close attention to it. We have to be attentive to it and say, this is unacceptable. This cannot stand. We will not accept this. If it means fighting you, we will fight you on this soil. But you cannot make laws in your parliaments in Europe and America and then expect us as Africans to take those laws. So the issue of the environment, as it has been, consistently mentioned, Europe and the United States are the biggest polluters of the environment. And at the Paris, climate summit, which was held, they committed to providing $100 billion to help Africa fight the environment, the environmental degradation, climate change. And that money, ever since 2017, when the Paris climate agreement was signed, they have never provided even a single coin of that money. Recently, Netherlands hosted a Paris Africa Adaptation Climate Summit. They hosted an Africa Adaptation Climate Summit which was supposed to be held in Amsterdam, in Netherlands, and the African leaders went. The chairperson of the African Union went. Macky Sall, who's the president of Senegal, Akufo-Addo went there. Felix Tshisekedi went there, and the Europeans did not show up at this summit. And yet, this summit was supposed to be where finances were supposed to be raised from to tackle the problem of climate change in Africa. They were supposed to raise money to tackle these problems because they committed themselves to raising this money for us to be able to tackle the problem. So to invest in clean energy projects on the continent. They have never provided a single coin, and they continue to sit in the European Parliament and make laws and make rules for us and talk about us. And so this is where it is important for us to reject this hypocrisy. And so I want to play this when President Museveni is commenting about their arrogance when it comes to Africa trying to meet its energy needs, and while for them they want to engage in their hypocrisy.
The East African pipeline and the refinery. we shall build a refinery at Hoima. I did not support the idea of a pipeline because I asked my Total friends, the man who died in Moscow. You remember that chairman of?
Sorry. The video is a little bit low, but let me get a much louder video, so that we can listen to President Museveni's. Of course, you agree, Museveni is not a perfect leader, but on this, he was right. He responded in the right way. He's not perfect, but he responded, to these Europeans in the right way. He responded in the right way. So let us listen to what President Museveni was saying in this.
The refinery and on the pipeline. Now, for the European Union, I spent many years studying English. 12 years. I think one of the words I picked up in those years is insufferable. Some of these people are insufferable. Insufferable. Yes. Now, for the European Union, I spent many years studying English. 12 years. I think one of the words I picked up in those years is insufferable. Some of these people are insufferable. You need to control yourself not to explode. So shallow, so egocentric, so wrong, but they think they know everything, broadcast their ignorance all over the place. But they should calm down. Because this is a wrong battleground for them. We don't take kindly to arrogance. That's why we spend so many years sorting out issues with arrogant people. So the plan will be implemented according to schedule. And I hope our partners join us firmly and advise those. When you go to this parliament, these are just young girls. Member of parliament, you are lecturing me what to do in Uganda. You young girl. I bet them those young girls when I went there.
Yeah, so this is President Museveni's response when it comes to the issue of the oil pipeline. Like I said, I think that President Museveni is not a perfect president, but when it comes to this issue, I think that he responded definitely in the right way, in the right tone, because the arrogancy of the Europeans, I think that it is unbecoming. Okay, it is intolerable. It is intolerable in many cases. They interfere with things which in many cases they don't understand, and they continue talking as if they know everything. And so this is what President Museveni is talking about as, as the arrogancy, okay, broadcasting. When he's talking about the issue of broadcasting, their arrogancy, we said that from research, the European Union is a very small country, especially Western Europe. When you look at it, combined, it doesn't even fit into the Democratic Republic of Congo. You can fit it in the Democratic Republic of Congo and you still have space, okay? But they have more pipeline layout, than the whole of Africa combined. Africa does not even reach half of what they have. But yet they are resisting, and they have cleared their trees, they have destroyed their environment. So instead of first taking care of their own environment, they have destroyed, they are talking about our environment, which is still existing in Africa. Our climate, we have taken more care of our climate than they have. We know more about preserving the environment than they have. So when we are talking about the East African oil pipeline, this is a pipeline which has passed through all the phases of verification. When we are talking about environment, when we are talking about the places where it is going to pass, the people have been, compensated. Some of them, not all of them, but about 70% of the people have been compensated for. The environmental impact assessment reports have come out, and everything has passed. They are actually, the environmental assessment report is one of the best in the world of that pipeline. People have been compensated, 70% of the people, and other people are still being compensated. So when you look at it, it is pure arrogancy that the president of Uganda has to respond in a very strong tone and to put it out there and say this is absolute ignorance. They are broadcasting their ignorance on things. They have not read the reports. If they have read the reports, then it means they are ignoring these reports for neo-colonial objectives. They want to focus on their neo-colonialism other than what is on the ground, what is going on the ground, with the pipeline and why people are building the pipeline. So because Total comes from Europe, so they think that they can pressure Total to drop the project. But this project, it has a lot of interest. And first of all, what the other thing which Museveni mentioned was that Uganda did not want to build a pipeline, but Total insisted that we should build a pipeline. Uganda wanted to build an oil refinery and supply the whole of East Africa, because East Africa doesn't have an oil refinery. Okay, so Uganda did not want to export crude oil. It wanted to add value to the fuel, to the oil, and sell it to East Africa, Sudan, okay, South Sudan, Eastern Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, all these places. We need a refinery around that place. So he had originally said that we should not build it, and Total insisted that they should build it. So it becomes kind of arrogant for these Europeans not to understand what even they are talking about. We had refused to build an oil refinery. We had refused to build an oil pipeline, and we wanted a refinery. And you Europeans came and convinced us that we should build the oil, pipeline. And now you are saying we should stop building a refinery. So we say that you have to stay in your arrogance, in your stupidity. If you are talking about stupidity, you stay in it and eat it, because you wanted to undermine us. So we are saying build the oil pipeline, because you said it will work. It is what is more profitable, because you want to focus more on profits. So build the oil pipeline, and also the refinery also has to be built. So this is what happened, that both the government in Uganda and the government in Tanzania responded to this arrogance and neo-colonial and racist comments about the pipeline, because they want to stop the East Africa from developing. Even some citizens in Uganda demonstrated and ran out and went to demonstrate against the European Union offices in Kampala. Yes, people came up to demonstrate at the European Parliament. I mean, European offices. Let me see. Let me see if I can get you this video. Straight at European Union office in Kampala. Kampala police dispersed demonstrators at headquarters. Yeah, so
last week the European Union Parliament came out and said
so people, Ugandans, were annoyed, and they came up to demonstrate against this arrogancy. And this is the video which I want to show you over here, so that you can, understand this situation very well for yourself.
Last week, the European Union Parliament came out and said digging an oil pipeline from Uganda will cause environmental degradation. This forced stakeholders, including the President, to encourage those doing this work to avoid getting confused. Tuesday morning, those who wish the country well, together with border riders from different districts across Uganda, have stormed the European Union headquarters in a demonstration to show their dissatisfaction with this issue.
This African crude pipeline is safe. We are here to tell the European Union to stop meddling with our oil. Our oil is our hope. Oil pipeline ziyita mubende kasanda zegeva era abantu batandika dde okubasasula. Twagala olwaleero okukolera wamu era nkyali mu kukunga bannayuganda mwenna abakyaliyo nga mulaba nti abazungu baagala kutulinyirira eddembe lyaffe batuze kubumbula bwekimu kye nazudde baagala kuddayo kutufuga enfuga eriyo ey'edda.
These have been carrying placards with wordings to the Europeans that issues of Uganda are none of their business. At arrival of some European officials, demonstrators sang the Ugandan anthem to show patriotism. All this was taking place in a calm environment with police not interfering.
We are also concerned in the matters of oil and the matters of Uganda as a country. So please let the European countries know that Uganda is an independent country.
The demonstrators were later allowed to hand over their document to European Union. As this was going on, police arrived at the scene and demonstrators were forced to vacate. Joseph Muyingo compiled this report.
Absolutely. So this is what happened with the oil pipeline last week. So the Ugandans, and this really made me happy that people came out to demonstrate against this arrogance of the Europeans. Now, what you are seeing is that the people on the ground, the ordinary citizens of Africa, are understanding what is going on in the world, and the people are speaking in the local language, but even them, they are understanding that this is neocolonialism. If you look at the placards which they are putting up, they are talking about imperialism. They're talking about neocolonialism because now they understand, and they are saying that these Europeans are trying to recolonize us like how they colonized us before, and they're trying to interfere with our development. So the people are conscious about these realities. They are conscious, and people are in the knowledge of the tactics of colonialism, and so people are resisting this kind of bondage, because people say that they want to take us back into bondage. So this is the issue, and these are ordinary people on the street. That is what really made me happy. It really made me very, very happy. that our people are starting to, to get understanding of this neocolonialism, because the people see this. One of the guys said that our people have already been compensated. Many of them are being compensated in the areas where I come from, Mubende, Kasanda. These are districts, in that part of Uganda where the pipeline is passing. So how can they say that this pipeline people have not been compensated? Because they have been saying that they are violating people's human rights. And at the recently concluded United Nations General Assembly, the 77th, many African countries and other countries around the world, like Iran, Venezuela, they have been commenting about the weaponization of human rights. Okay, it is not Africans who are violating the human rights around the world. The people who bombed and killed millions in Iraq, these are the people who are violating human rights. The people who killed millions in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Somalia, people who are using drones and killing thousands of people, these are the people who are violating human rights. And these are not Africans. These are Europeans and Americans. And it's the same people who are talking about human rights. So we need to reject this hypocrisy. We need to reject this arrogance as Africans. Absolute rejection. You can't talk about human rights if you have not compensated the people in Libya, whose country you attacked with your fighter jets. You can't talk about, human rights if you have not compensated us for slavery and colonialism, and you continued in neocolonialism. The World Bank came out to declare that the structural adjustments were disastrous itself. So you have to compensate us. If you imposed your policies on us and they didn't work, then you have to compensate us. But you have not compensated us, and you have carried out, these are human violations. These are human rights violations, because you deprived us of our economic rights, and you killed, many people died, even though they died silently, but people who died of poverty, people who died because of lack of medicines in hospitals, because of the structural adjustments. These are human rights violations. You have not compensated us for this, and you are here talking about human rights. So I think that we need to be straight on issues like this. We need to be candid as Africans on issues like this. Okay, we need to be candid on issues like this. And so the East African community and citizens have called out the European Union and said it should leave Africa alone. It should leave Africa alone. It should leave the East Africa community alone. It should get off the East African oil pipeline. Okay, it should get off the East African oil pipeline. And so that is what happened in that part of the African continent, in East Africa, that we are talking about. In another news that is very important for our continent and what has been happening, for a long time, is that these guys, the TPLF guys, who have been fighting against the democratically elected government in Ethiopia, who came up and they attacked the government. They said that they have agreed to talk, to negotiate with the Ethiopian government under the leadership of the African Union, even though they have been refusing for a very long time. And they are saying that the African Union is biased. The African Union is towing the line of the government in Addis Ababa. But President of Ethiopia and Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy, have both insisted that this is an African matter, and the problem to this problem has to be found in Africa. African solutions to African problems. The issue of bringing in foreigners like these Europeans who don't know anything about human rights, and they have been violating human rights of many, and the issue of bringing in the United Nations, which is very biased, very, very biased. Even when you look at what is going on in Ukraine, it's very biased, and it wants to toe the line of the Europeans. the Prime Minister has said that this has to be an African solution. It is an African problem, and we need to look for African solutions. And what does this show for us? What does this show for us? It shows that if we insist enough and empower the African Union and empower ourselves as Africans, we can be able to solve our own problems. We Africans can solve our own problems. We don't need to invite foreigners. We don't need to go to the United Nations and tell them what we are doing here, as some of the leaders did. You know, some leaders on this continent, they went there to tell how we are working on the, how we are working on the, we are working on Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I don't think we need to go there and mention what we are doing about our problems. I remember President Felix Tshisekedi went to the UN and spent almost half of his speech talking about how Rwanda is attacking Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. I think that if the East African community is trying to handle the problem, he should try and trust the East African community and insist and trust the African Union to solve this problem. This is what the spirit of Pan-Africanism is, and this shows that you have faith in yourself and you have faith in your people that they can be able to solve these problems. Because remember, he himself, President Felix Tshisekedi, agreed that the UN has to come out of. It has to reevaluate and come out of the Democratic Republic of Congo because of its record. It has been there for the last 60 years and no problem has been solved by its presence. So why go to the United Nations and then continue to put out our, business as Africans? You can't put out your business out there in the public for all of them. So I think that President President Felix Tshisekedi, our internal business as a continent should not be put out there at the United Nations. I think you people as leaders need to step up and understand we need to go with a single position when we are going to these international forums for the good of our people. So President Abiy has continued to show that African solutions, even in the speech which he sent to the UN, which was delivered by the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Ethiopia, the speech reiterated the importance of African solutions to African problems. And I agree that as Africans, those who are conscious of these facts need to continue to trumpet these solutions, need to continue to trumpet this narrative that African solutions to African problems, so that some of these leaders or misleaders who think that they cannot solve their problems, they have to send it to the United Nations, which they know that will not solve the problem. They want to send it to, they want to send those problems to the US and Europe, who cannot even solve our problems. They will also be able to learn that our problems can only be solved here by Africans, as Africans. The other thing I learned from this is that with the TPLF turning around, is that it has been overpowered by the narrative that Ethiopia has put out there. And this narrative is that Ethiopia has insisted that our problems will only be solved by the African Union. And what I've been talking about is that Ethiopia has stuck to this narrative. Okay, this is the good thing about, this is the very, very good thing about Prime Minister Abiy, is that he is someone with a single position and he holds it consistently. It's not like how you see President Akufo-Addo. Now, when I speak about President Akufo-Addo, this is not in any way an attack on Ghana as a country or its people, but on Akufo-Addo as a person and his government. As you can see, I have the Ghana flag over here. So what I mean is that as a person, he's inconsistent. As a person, President Akufo-Addo is inconsistent. You cannot be talking about Africa beyond aid, and at the same time, you are negotiating with the IMF. You are misusing the resources in the country, and you can't take back the resources. You can't solve the fundamental problems facing the economy. You can't be talking about Pan-Africanism and year of return, and beyond the year of return, you are inviting people of African descent. And at the same time, you are wasting money and going to these Europeans to beg them, going, to Europe, you have houses in Europe and stuff like that. Okay, so you can't be talking like that. So you have to have a single position. You have to have one position and be consistent in your narrative. You have to be consistent in your narrative, and that is when we will believe you as an African. But less than that, we don't see any solution in you. If you are talking about African solutions to African problems, if you're talking about Ghana beyond aid, Africa beyond aid, then we expect you to champion African solutions to African problems, because this is what it means. And be in that position, hold that position, and solve the problem, solve the fundamental problems of the economy. And let us see these solutions. Let us see African entrepreneurs being propped up instead of being overtaxed. Let us see you emphasizing, growing African entrepreneurs instead of attracting more foreigners to come and assemble vehicles in the country to destroy African enterprises, which are trying to do the same thing. So this is what we are saying, that this consistency is needed within the African world and the African leadership. And we think that the Prime Minister, Abiy, has shown that consistency by saying that African solutions to African problems, by rejecting Western influence, by rejecting the US, rejecting Europe, because he has realized that these people don't have any legitimacy to solve our problems. They have been the source of chaos. The UN came out in September 2021 and released the trucks to the rebels. And then again this year, it lost fuel. It gave the rebels fuel. Gave the rebels 300 trucks, gave them fuel, and at the same time they are still talking about helping to solve the problem. So they are fueling the problem. They are fueling the rebellion. So this is what we are talking about as Africans, and saying that somebody has to be consistent in their narrative. And if it is African solutions, let it be African solutions to African problems. So the next thing which we will go to is the coup in Burkina Faso. There was a coup in Burkina Faso. There was a coup over there, and this is the second coup in 8 months. Colonel Damimba was deposed. He was deposed by the other comrades with whom they came to power, and reason being that they suspected him of not solving the problems which they came to solve together as people who carried out the coup. And of course, the African Union, as usual, came out to condemn this coup that happened in Burkina Faso. And we want to say to the African Union that it has to go beyond just condemning a coup. The African Union has to learn to go beyond condemning a coup, but rather to be proactive. Proactive. That means it has to study at the genesis of the problem. What is the genesis of the problem? Where did this problem come from? For the African Union has to understand where the problem came from. If it is lack of services by the people, then it has to understand that services, encourage the other governments that services have to be delivered to the people. If it is external influence and sucking of resources and siphoning out resources so that people don't have anything, then these problems have to be told to the African governments. There should be a bureau, even though this is African Union, but there should be a bureau on Pan-Africanism. There should be a bureau of Pan-Africanism within the African Union, which communicates with the citizens on the ground. But this is not being done. So the problems of the African people, as long as they are not understood and they are being discussed at the elite level, the elites are the ones discussing and living in their mansions and while people are suffering on the ground, and they are leaving their mansions in London, in Washington, in South Africa, in everywhere, in Paris, and they are flying in to the African Union to discuss African problems when they are out of touch with the reality of what is going on to the ground, on the ground. Then these problems will keep, occurring. So the African Union came in to condemn the coup, you see, and calling it unconstitutional. Of course, you have to call it unconstitutional. It has to be unconstitutional. But even the one which happened before, it was unconstitutional. Now, Canada Mingba was accused of not heeding to the reason why they carried out the first coup. And it's like they suspected, which I also suspected in the first place. If you check my YouTube channel, you will see the videos. I made some videos, and I suspected that the coup in Burkina Faso is possible that France was behind, the first coup in Burkina Faso. So Canada Mimba was trying to toe the line of France. Corruption was going in, within himself, that France was trying to corrupt him. And the soldiers were monitoring this. They were watching this. So they were trying to resist this. They were trying to resist this. The soldiers were trying to resist this. So let us watch briefly this video from africanews.com and see what it is saying about this situation.
The African Union has condemned what it called the unconstitutional change of government in Burkina Faso. On Friday, junior officers overthrew Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who himself had taken power in a military coup just months earlier. As soldiers took over state TV, they said 34-year-old Captain Ibrahim Traoré was in charge. In the capital Ouagadougou, opinion was mixed. He could no longer manage the security situation, he says. Many people died, and more criminals approached the big cities. So many people were not happy about that. If there was a problem between the soldiers, discuss it between you, he says, to find the right solution. It's not the right solution to overthrow the power. That means, with this kind of situation, you don't know when it's going to end. Head of the African Union, Moussa Faki Mohammed, said he was deeply concerned about a resurgence of unconstitutional ousters in Burkina Faso. He demanded the restoration of the constitutional order by July 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the situation in Mali. I mean, that's the situation in Burkina Faso and what happened over there. So we need to pray for the good people of Burkina Faso, for them to be able to overcome this situation. The whole of Africa needs to pay attention to what is happening to the rest of the parts of the continent, because these things will continue to occur. The people are conscious. People came out and even they attacked the French embassy. Yes, people came out to attack the French embassy in Burkina Faso. So the military had to disperse them. As people attacked the French embassy, because the French have been interfering in the African continent for a very long time. So the African people are not really happy about this. And I said that the African people, to a larger extent, have become conscious of the problems. The African people have become very conscious of the problems. They gathered, Burkina Faso tear gas was fired at them, but they gathered outside and they tried to attack the French embassy. So as you are seeing that the local people, the ordinary people in East Africa coming up against this European arrogance when it comes to the oil pipeline, it's the same situation that you are seeing in Burkina Faso, far away from East Africa, and it's the same situation you are seeing in Mali. So there's a new awakening amongst the African people that they are saying that we have to take back what belongs to us. These Europeans have been stealing from us, so they are saying that the French should get out our continent. We want to take back our continent. We want to control our continent as Africans, because this continent belongs to us. And European and the white man cannot solve any more, problems. They cannot solve any more problems, or they cannot claim to be solving any of our problems at all. So this is what the people are saying in Burkina Faso and all over the African continent. This is what people are saying all over the African continent. So with that being said, the last news which we want to talk about is the United Nations. We want to talk about the United Nations. We want to continue to talk about the United Nations. But I want to remind you, I want to remind you that this program is brought to you by Full Moon Holdings. I've put the website out there, and even down here on the scroller, you can see Full Moon Holdings .wixsite.com/my-site-1. So on this Full Moon Holdings, we have a lot of businesses out there. We have shopping. You can go out there and do shopping, a couple of items, various items, and then we will deliver them. So it's online shopping. We have vehicles. We shop vehicles like we have shown you. These are the vehicles. We have different items, TVs, and we also have goods which we bring from East Africa to West Africa. Goods like tea and coffee. Yes, very, very important. We have organic coffee, which comes from East Africa, not imported. Don't buy other products from other European companies which are saying that they have coffee. They don't understand what coffee is. So this is what it means to have coffee. So that is original coffee which comes from East Africa, from the hills and mountains of East Africa. So if you want real coffee, you don't want fake coffee, then reach out to our site and give us a call also. So that is the coffee. You want to take flavored coffee. You don't want to take chemicals from other people. Then reach out to us. The numbers, are there on the website. If you go there, you will get those numbers. You will get those numbers absolutely. But I will put those numbers also on the screen, on the scroller down here, so that you can be able to reach out. There is a lot of other things which Full Moon Holdings is engaged in, the sale of different items. I've tried to bring up the numbers here so that you can be able to see them and the contacts. Yes, the numbers and the contacts, they are here. Also, you can be able to see them and contact Full Moon Holdings for the right quality products. We sell also tea. We realize that in East Africa there's a lot of tea and coffee, and there's milk. But in West Africa, most of the milk, the coffee, and tea is imported from Sri Lanka. It is unacceptable. And under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we want to take advantage of this situation. So taking advantage of that situation, we decided to start bringing those products into West Africa, starting with Ghana. So reach out to us on those contacts and let us do business. We bring all these items from East Africa, to West Africa, starting with Ghana. The tea, the milk, the coffee, all of them which are being used in West Africa are imported from Sri Lanka, Germany, India, all types of tea, Lipton and all that. We have been hearing that they are being imported from Sri Lanka, but even when you go to supermarkets and check. But we have these products. Here. They are from East Africa. They are from Africa. Okay. These products are from Africa and by African farmers. So let us use them and stop using foreign products. This is the only way to grow the African economy. And Full Moon Holdings is the first is the first company, to do this. Full Moon Holdings is the first company to do this, and we have decided to carry out this important task that has been given to us by our people and by our ancestors, and to understand that if we work under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, items like milk, which is here, can be delivered to the people. Powdered milk, this is powdered milk, but this milk is made from, if you are in West Africa, this milk is made even when you are outside West Africa and you are in Europe. For those who are watching in from Europe and those who are watching in from the United States, if you want to experience, natural milk, which is not chemicals, many of the companies, especially the European companies, are selling chemicals which are mixed, and they are not, natural organic milk. So reach out to us. We have these products. Full Moon Holdings has these products, like we said, and this is natural milk from cow milk, but it is turned into powder, for your natural consumption, so that you don't take in chemicals. So we want you to stay healthy, at the same time, live longer. So this is the tea bags. This is the tea bags also. So we are out there. We source our tea from both Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, all over East Africa, and we bring it to the western part of Africa. So reach out to us, and come and shop on Full Moon Holdings website.com. Like we said, we sell a lot of products, a lot of items, TVs, and all this. So in an African spirit, come out there and support us in this work which we are doing for the continent. Like I said, we shop a lot, and we also have a website. We have a workshop in the country where we manufacture a lot of things. We manufacture a lot of things, as you are seeing. We manufacture a lot of things. We manufacture a lot of things. We manufacture towers. We manufacture radio towers. As you are seeing, the company is called Joza Engineering and Fabrication. We manufacture gates. We manufacture filtration systems for your water, roofing, trusses, metal roofing if you don't want to use wood. We manufacture windows and doors and tables, and we sell steel also. If you want trailers, we can manufacture trailers for you, those ones who want them. We manufacture containers and steel buildings, water towers. So there's nothing we do not manufacture as long as it is made in steel. So this is all made in Ghana, made in West Africa, made in Africa. So security gates, radio towers and communication towers, solar. For if you want solar for your house, reach out to us. If you want also water towers, reach out to us. If you want trailers, reach out to us. If you want lights, solar lights, reach out to us. You want street light poles, reach out to us. We manufacture everything. And then on the other side, we have Full Moon Entertainment. We have Full Moon Entertainment for those Ghanaians who want to watch foreign movies in Twi. We have decided to do that for you. I'll also play slightly for those who want to see what interpretation of foreign movies is about. We interpret the foreign movies into the Twi language, the Ghanaian language, which language is consumed by some people in Togo and some people in Burkina Faso. So be out there and also consume it.
Why do we continue looking inward? Why? That piece of land. Why are we not looking? I have already found a passageway. We have seen rich and there must be more. We must stop this. the class as soon to go together.
We will not need to fight amongst ourselves. We would not need to kill anymore. Offer the land. Let the my man tends the same way as Ragnos.
I know the right back and
Join with him.
my near England.
What do you say, Yaramo?
Now, so yes, now, Bakayabo.
Yes.
Miss Majachi, Miss Minimum,
I will break with you.
Miss Minimum, Babacam, England. And you do. You can England. Why?
Yeah, so Full Moon Entertainment doesn't stop there. It has a division where you can reach out to us. There's also a YouTube channel. It's not actually a YouTube, but it's an African YouTube channel which is called blackvision.com. That is where you can blackvision.co.uk. Blackvision.co.uk is an African tube channel where you can find videos, and so you can find Full Moon Entertainment over there. But when you come to fullmoonholdings.wixsite.com/my-site-1 and you go there, you will be able to reach out to that. And we also have Salon Glamour. For those who are staying in Tamale, you can do your hair at Salon Glamour. Do your hair, give Salon Glamour a call. Come to the website, fullmoonholdings.wixsite.com. Come to the website, and then they will do your hair. Give a call. Salon Glamour is here. Make your appointment. The numbers are there, and then your hair will be done. If you are in Tamale, or you are in Ghana and you have a special occasion, weddings, and you like your hair to be done, you can call Salon Glamour all over Ghana and West Africa. You will just plead with you, and then we will talk about the transportation of our people who are going to come to do the hair for your functions, birthdays and weddings, and our people will come to do that hair for you. On the other hand, we have Georgia, the delicious Shito. Also, when you come to the website, the contacts are there. That Shito is very, very delicious. I use it myself. So it is important that you come out there and support Georgia delicious Shito. So we are remaining with one item, which is the United Nations speeches. They just concluded African Union. They just concluded the United Nations General Assembly, the 77th United Nations General Assembly, which happened. We want to talk about those speeches. Many speeches were given, but what did the African heads of state do right, and what is it that needs change? Because the African leaders did many things, but there are things which need change. We think that those are things which need to be criticized so that our leaders can improve. They did a lot of good things, but at the same time, there is a lot of things which need to be criticized from their speeches, because I took time to analyze their speeches, and not to be looked at as overly biased. I want to start with the looking at our leaders and their. I want to start by looking at the good things which they did at these United Nations. From the speeches, how they handled themselves. What did they say right? Okay, what did they say right during these speeches, and what did they say that needs to change? What did they say that needs to change as African leaders on behalf of the African people? On behalf of the African people? On behalf of the African people? Definitely. So that is what we want to look at. That is what we want to look at. What is it that they said that is good for Africa and the African people? And then we'll go from there and look at the criticism. We'll go from there and look at the criticism of them. Now, one of the things, I will start with the commendation. I will start with what they said that was right for us as a people. What they said that was right for us as a people. The African leaders, one of the things which they said that was good for us as a people is that many of the leaders, especially starting with the speech, one of the speeches which I consider very important was the speech which was given by Madame Naleda Pandor. That speech was very, very good. It spoke almost in a Pan-African spirit. The condemnation of sanctions on Zimbabwe, was very, very good, was very important for us as Africans. It was a very good gesture by all African heads of state who came up and condemned the sanctions, those sanctions on Zimbabwe. All the African leaders condemned them. All the African leaders condemned those sanctions on Zimbabwe, which was really, really a very, very good thing that was done by our leaders. That was a very, very good thing that was done about the situation in Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe has been under sanctions for the last 20 years. They did not only do that, but they added in Cuba. Okay, so majority of the African leaders, at least they agreed on the fact that the imperialist sanctions on Zimbabwe are unjustified, and actually they have failed. These sanctions have failed. And so it is important for us to always stand together as Africans in condemning this imperialism that is being carried out by the West. So this imperialism that is being carried out by the West, is important for us to stand together and condemn it together. Okay, we have to stand together to fight the imperialism. We cannot continue to allow the imperialists, to decide our fate as Africans. So we have to stand together. So African leaders, kudo with you, starting with Madame Naleda Pandor, the Minister of Foreign Relations, or the Minister of Foreign Affairs for South Africa. She did a very, very good job, and her speech is one of the best speeches. Number two was the reform. All the African leaders agreed, and they called for the reform of the United Nations. Reform of the United Nations. That means giving the African Union 2 seats at the United Nations Permanent Security Council. Okay, as it was agreed by Israeli consensus. All African heads of state agreed that Africa should get and should demand and get 2 seats at the African Union. One thing which I would like to caution African leaders here is that from the speech that was given by Macron, it is being prepared to trick us as Africans into accepting that they want to trick Africa into taking seats but without veto powers, because Macron was saying that expanding the United Nations Security Council, which he agrees, Permanent Security Council, seats on the Permanent Security Council, but he was saying that the use of vetoes. So it is possible that they want to take away the veto power to give us the seats on the Permanent Security Council, but then withhold the veto powers. I think that is something which we need to be careful of and reject, because we want full veto powers according to the Israeli consensus. We have to have full veto powers, as they have been having veto powers. So it is important for Africa to have 2 seats. So from there, African leaders, we want to commend you for standing with Zimbabwe, number one, to condemn the sanctions, the imperialist sanctions, unjustified sanctions, and also for demanding that Africa should have a seat at the United Nations. Africa should have 2 seats actually at the United Nations, not only 1 but 2. Not only 1 but 2 seats at the United Nations Permanent Security Council. And number 3, Africa has a right to develop its own resources without lectures about climate change. This is something which we spoke about already, as Africa has gone on to try to develop its resources, its oil and gas resources. The Western world has come in to try to lecture Africa about climate change, about this and that. But when you look at the situation, when you look at what is going on in Europe, these Europeans at the same time, they are carrying out destruction of the environment. They are blocking the pipe in Russia from delivering gas to Europe for some selfishness, for some selfish, reasons that they don't want to be over dependent on Russia as their cousin. The United States is telling them that they should not be. But there's no justifiable reason for even a few days ago, they tried, the United States with its CIA, they have started punching holes into the Nord Stream 1 so that it will not be able to deliver. So it will start leaking and it will be dysfunctional. And this is very dangerous to the Europeans themselves, but they don't understand that this is dangerous. What the United States is doing to them is very dangerous to them. So they are switching on coal plants. They are switching on some of the most dangerous sources of energy and using it at the same time lecturing to us as Africans. And they are not committing money for fighting the climate change, but they are rather lecturing us on climate change. So the African leaders stood together and they resisted it. And they said Africa, President Felix Tshisekedi said that Africa has a right, to develop its resources, its energy resources. So this is something which we have to commend the African leaders for. There was also a pushback against the weaponization of human rights. In Africa and around the continent. We have spoken about what is happening in Ethiopia, that the Human Rights Commission, the United Nations Human Rights Commission, has been weaponizing, as the United Nations itself is being weaponized, and many countries have said that the United Nations is being weaponized. They are also weaponizing it on the human rights issue. So many leaders at the United Nations General Assembly, which just ended last week, they said that the weaponization of human rights by the United Nations and the West, we reject it. We have to reject it, and we continue to reject it. So what is happening is that the people of the world have realized that neocolonialism has been here for a long time, and the proponents, these people who are pushing these methods of European colonization and domination, are still out there working. But the people of the world have continued, to resist this colonialism, because people are tired of being dominated by these Europeans, because they have not produced anything good for us. And then also, thanks to the Ethiopian people for financing the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam also is a project which is very, very powerful. And this is something from which when we are talking about Felix Tshisekedi, who was talking about the Inga Dam, he can pick a leaf from this. I think that President Felix Tshisekedi, if you are out there, people need to interpret this for you. You need to pick a leaf from the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam in the process of building the Inga Dam. You don't need to wait for World Bank and those financial institutions, because those Europeans, they don't want to develop Africa, they just want to exploit it. So it is important to come and list the Grand Inga Renaissance Dam, Grand Inga Dam, on all the stock exchanges of the continent, all the stock exchanges of the countries of the continent, so that the Africans can buy shares into the Inga Dam and invest, and this dam will be built in that way, as Ethiopia has done it. All the diaspora have shares in this, and it was built by the Ethiopians. The Ethiopian money, the people, the citizens used their money to build this dam, and this is the biggest dam in Africa currently, and the 7th biggest in the world. So it is important for us to look at these, these projects. So big up to the people in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian people, for showing the way. President Magufuli also had already shown the way. So whether they kill President Magufuli, these imperialists, the idea was already planted. Whether they kill who and who, the ideas have already been planted, and people are tired of Europeans. People are tired of Europeans and their hypocrisy, because they have brought nothing but destruction. They are lecturing about human rights. They are destroying and killing people. They are lecturing about environment. They are destroying the environment in their places. The African continent is the only place where animals are remaining. Europeans have eaten all their animals. If they want to see animals, they come to Africa. So this attitude of hypocrisy, people are really tired of it. So Africa needs to stand on itself, as President Abiy has consistently said. African solutions to African, African solutions to African problems. And then at the UN also, there was a push against the involvement of Africa in selfish neo-colonial projects. When I'm talking about the selfish neo-colonial projects, like the attack on Russia, Africa has been, they have been trying to coerce Africa to engage in their fight. This is a neo-colonial project in Ukraine. So to coerce Africa to get involved in this neo-colonial project of colonizing Ukraine and antagonizing Russia, Africa rejected this. Okay, all African leaders, the chairperson of African Union, who's President Macky Sall, rejected this, that Africa he's tired of being pulled and coerced to get involved in World War I, World War II. Historically, it has not benefited us anything. And so involving us in your war with Russia, we rejected that activity. And we want to commend the African leaders for this. And number 1, 2, 3, number 7, member, AU members, we think that it is important that they don't sell out. They should not sell out our continent to parrot neo-colonial narratives. Okay, all African leaders, even though President Macky Sall was mentioning this, President Akufo-Addo was parroting neo-colonial narrative, which is very dangerous. President Akufo-Addo, instead of solving African problems, he was saying that it is because of the bullets that are dropping in Ukraine that empty people are going empty stomach in Africa or in Ghana and stuff like that. I think that President Akufo-Addo has to revise himself also. This is what we spoke about him, that he has to hold one position instead of wobbling, going this side and this side. It shows that you don't have a position. Okay, you don't have a position. On one side, you are negotiating with the IMF. On another side, you are talking about, Africa beyond aid. On another side, you are parroting their narrative. Okay, you are parroting their narrative. And even though these people, they don't like you, they will not, agree with you. They will not give you respect. You still want to parrot their narrative about Ukraine and stuff like that. You need to stand as a man and someone who knows history. So if you don't know history, then you need to sit down and keep quiet, because you don't know the history of the African continent and how it struggled with the imperialism. The African continent struggled a lot with with the imperialism, and the Soviet Union and Russia was there to help Africa to overcome imperialism and colonialism. So President Akufo-Addo, if you are not aware of these facts, then get your books and start reading so that you can understand what is going on in the world today. So the other thing which we want to talk about is the criticism of the heads of state, of African heads of state at the just concluded United Nations General Assembly, 77th United Nations General Assembly. So one of them is that which I have just finished, the encouraging of a neo-colonial narrative. I think we need to abandon that attitude. President Akufo-Addo and other leaders, you need to stand in one position, and that African position, and it has to be African solutions to African problems. You can't go and start blaming Ukraine and say it is because of Ukraine war and Russia that is why we have hunger in Africa. No, why we have hunger in Africa? Because you are weak and you have failed to grow the food. Otherwise, your people would not have been depending on food from foreign countries. And you need to call out these your imperialist masters. If you are an African leader and you are towing the lines of the imperialists, you need to call them out for their hypocrisy. You know, like the ships of grain which left the Ukraine port, they were saying that those ships are coming to the poor countries. 87 of the ships which left the port, only 2 came to Africa, and 85 went to Europe and the United States. So if you are talking about bullets, going in and stomachs going empty, then you need to mention these facts as a president who is towing the neo-colonial narrative, and you have forgotten why you, as an African president, you need to tow the African solutions, African problems, African solutions narrative. That is what we want to hear. So we need to have a position as Africans when we go to speak at the United Nations, like what we did when it comes to the sanctions on Zimbabwe. And so the heads of state of the African continent, their speeches should not contradict the chairman or the chairperson of the African Union and what he has said. And so we see contradictions at the United Nations. So the contradictions on the African continent within the African heads of state should be eliminated, completely eliminated when it comes to our continent. The condemnation of there should be a condemnation of the United States and the West for fueling the conflict in Ukraine. And this is a fact that is going on, but many of the African leaders, they did not speak about it. Many of them, majority of them, they did not speak about it. Who is fueling the conflict in Ukraine? It is the Western world which is powering weapons. Russia has agreed to come to the table and negotiate with the Ukraine. Is this an issue that other leaders on the continent are aware about, are aware of? So if you are aware of these facts, then you need to come out there and mention that the West should stop sending weapons. Then there will be negotiations, because the more we understand that Russia is more powerful than Ukraine. So you can't say that the weak person should take on more weapons and continue fighting if the stronger person has said, let us negotiate. So I think that we need to be real and also understand the genesis, the history of this conflict, not just come out and mention today, this is this and this is that. So our leaders, I think we need to criticize them for not being strong enough to mention that position. Africa needs to be aligned with what is happening around the world in that position, and criticize the West for fueling the conflict, for pouring weapons. It needs to stop. African leaders, you need to do that. The condemnation of the bill, which is called HR 7311, the bill called HR 7311, that bill was just recently condemned by Mrs. Naleda Pandor, the Minister of International Relations of South Africa, who condemned the idea that the United Nations, the United States and its Congress can make laws to work in Africa, a law which is supposed to say that Africa should choose, the United States should be responsible for Africa choosing, friends. Okay. That bill, which is being passed, and many African leaders have not paid attention to this, and these things have consequences for our continent. How can the United States decide from its Congress that it will choose friends for Africa. It should, decide which friends Africa should interact with. So this bill was called subversive on the African continent by South Africa. And I want to thank South Africa for that. But our other African leaders, they did not pay attention to this bill. And it is very important. It's very important that we pay attention to such things as we paid to the one which happened in the European Union, whereby they are making laws about the East African oil pipeline, because it is such things as these that led to the Berlin Conference, that we were colonized and brutalized by these people and killed by these people, and millions of our people were killed because we didn't pay attention to these activities. So our leaders need to continue to pay attention to this. We need to have faith in the African Union, faith in the African Union, instead of putting our affairs at the United Nations. We need to put our faith, as the Prime Minister Abiy has consistently said. We have to parrot the narrative of African solutions to African problems and say that Africa can solve its own problems. We do not need the UN, we do not need the Europeans, we do not need the US unless we choose, but we do not need them, because they have been here for the last 600 years and they have not solved any problems for us. They have instead exacerbated our problems. Like I mentioned before you, the World Bank recently agreed that the policies which they instituted for us during the structural adjustment, they were disastrous. They agreed themselves. So they have been here for the last 600 years. The slavery, the colonialism, the neocolonialism, all these, they didn't produce any goods for us. They didn't produce anything good for us. They instead produced death for our people, destruction of our cultures, stealing of our artifacts. So we need to have faith in the African Union and stop taking our issues to the United Nations. President Tshisekedi, spending a full, almost half of your speech on Rwanda at the United Nations, these issues should be discussed at the African Union level and the East African Community level, and they will be solved there. We believe that these things will be solved there. African speeches also should be interpreted in Swahili. Yes, at the United Nations, we think that the African speeches which are being given at the United Nations, they should not only be interpreted to French and English, but all of the speeches. We need to insist as Africans that our speeches should be interpreted in Kiswahili. They should be interpreted to Kiswahili as a language so that the African citizens can listen to them. Yes, we need the speeches to be interpreted to Kiswahili because we are Africans. We are Africans, and Kiswahili is one of our prominent languages as Africans. So that is a suggestion that I'm putting out there to our African heads of state. President Ramaphosa, President of Senegal and Chairman of the African Union, this is a suggestion that you need to take seriously, and the African Union also, that our speeches need to be interpreted to Kiswahili at the United Nations, because Swahili is considered as one of the biggest languages around the world, and it is also a language that is spoken by a lot of Africans, and it is also a language that is recognized by many other networks like the BBC, and is being broadcasted. So we need to push for this. I think that President Tshisekedi has spoken about the situation in the Congo. I think that the instability in the Congo, it has not been for the last 20 years. It did not start the last 20 years. I think that President Tshisekedi, to say that Rwanda is the cause of the problems in the Congo, I think it needs to be studied critically. The problems in the Congo did not start in the last 20 years. Those problems started after independence by the imperialists who have wanted the resources of the Congo and the resources of the African continent. I want to recommend a book to President Felix Tshisekedi, the book called Challenge of the Congo, which was written by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, so that President Tshisekedi, you will be able to understand what the problem is in the Congo very well. I understand that you are the president as the leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but I think that these problems of the UN, what it is doing there in the Congo for the last 60 years, it needs to be understood critically. Also, the African heads of state need to continue to criticize, which was necessary, to criticize the privatization of multilateral organizations like the United Nations, IMF, World Bank, and making them as if they belong to the Western world. We understand that they built them, but the organizations, if they built them and they called them multilateral organizations, then they should be multilateral and they should not belong to the Western world. But if they want to continue to be Western world, then all of us should get out as Africans and citizens of the world. So I think the African leaders, African heads of state, you need to be firm on this. You need to be firm on this. And also, the other point which needs to be paid attention to as African heads of state, I think the continuous pointing out of the hypocrisy of the Europeans and the Western world. And this needs to be done consistently without stopping at the United Nations and all platforms at the United Nations and the African Union, at our regional bodies, East African Community. We need to continue to point it out and let them lose credibility all across the world. Like they have lost, they have lost it. Let us continue to push this narrative that they have lost credibility. They have no right to tell us how to run our economies. When we are talking about the energy, when we are talking about food, they have no credibility of telling us that they are helping us. They are not helping us, but rather they are using Africa to help themselves. Like when we are talking about that, they were saying that the grain that is coming from Ukraine is going to the poor countries like Africa, especially they focus on Africa. But it turned out those poor countries are in Europe, which took 87. They took 85 of the 87 ships of grain that left Ukraine. So it turns out the poor countries that wanted the grain are not in Africa, they are in Europe. So we need to reject this. We need to point out this hypocrisy, and we need to reject this false narrative that is being pushed. So the African leaders need to condemn the use of Africa, and this was not done. They need to condemn the use of Africa by Europe and the Western world to blackmail the world, to scam the world, and into releasing that grain. And this is something which President Putin saw. This is something also which President Erdogan of Turkey also saw, and he said that it is true. He agrees with President Putin on the issue of grain. So I want to thank you. Like I said, my name is Kwame Gonza, and the show is sponsored by Full Moon Holdings. You are seeing the website is here, fullmoonholdings.wixsite.com /my-site-1, and the contact is also there. You can call us. We have shown you what we are doing as Full Moon Holdings, and so this has been our weekly update on the African continent. So share this channel, share it with the people out there. My name is Kwame Gonza once again. Until we meet next week when we come to update you on the issues and the news happening on our African continent and our analysis on how they affect the African continent. Thank you very much. Share it and invite others to subscribe to the channel. Big up to you. And we say Africa must unite. Africa must unite. By the way, I don't want to forget, go out in the comment section and sign the petitions which have been endorsed by the PLO Lumumba Foundation. We are working with them. Dr. Edmond Folfak, Pan-African Daily TV. We are working for unifying the African continent. We are working for a single passport. We are working for a single military. Those are the three petitions, and that is what they are about: a single military, which will help us to stop the wars on the continent. So those three petitions are very important because the PLO Lumumba Foundation has signed. Dr. Edmond Folfak, Pan-African Daily TV, Dr. Susan, Sister Shanice, the Sister Shanice show, the prominent Sister Shanice, she has signed these. So we need to work together. We need to continue to work together in pushing Africa to the heights where it is supposed to be. Big up to you. Africa must unite. Africa must unite. Africa must unite. Until we meet next time.